So since you're a technology guy, how did this idea of Diaboogle come up, and when did you start doing this, and tell us about that.
Okay, so let me first explain that Diaboogle lets you search on the internet for information about diabetes. So you can type in things like different types of injections. Let's say a Pedra insulin or continuous glucose monitor or super bolus, something like that, and it will return you a list of results. But the big difference is that it uses Google technology, but it only looks on sites that I tell it to look at. And therefore, I won't add a site to that list unless I've already looked at it and made sure it's not just a scam site of some sort. And so when you search for something that on Google might give you 20 million results, on mine it typically gives you maybe 150 results.
Exactly.
And it also is broken down into categories like blogs and prevention and research. And so you can kind of look at it in a little bit more detail. And I originally started because I heard about this technology back in 2007. I thought it would be very interesting for me. And once I started to use it, I thought, I bet other people would benefit from it. And so it doesn't get a whole lot of use. But since I've started it, it's certainly got about 10,000 people have used it at one stage or another. And so now when I'm searching myself for diabetes information for something new, the first thing I do is I go to diaboogle.com and I type in the search there and see what comes up.
That's very good, and it's a very informative site for people with diabetes.
Yes.
To help their day-to-day issues. So the other one is next coming to your triathlon, which is a really tough task for everyone or for anyone to do that. So what made you do that, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people with diabetes have done bike rides or walks at some stage to raise money for diabetes research. And I had heard about this doctor in Boston, Dr. Denise Faustman, who was doing research into a possible cure for type 1 diabetes, which, typically I don't believe in, but this seemed really upfront. And so I did a couple of bike rides for her to raise money, 25 miles typically. And then the person who was organizing those bike rides that were just to raise research for her said, well, we've raised enough money. We're not going to do it anymore. And I thought, well, what could I do? And then a friend of mine at work who does big triathlons told me about triathlons. And I thought, that's it. I'll enter into a triathlon and I'll just tell all my friends, I'm going to do this triathlon. And if he likes sponsoring me, that's fine. And the first triathlon I did was up in Maine, and it was the Maniac triathlon. Basically a half-mile swim in the ocean, 12-mile bike ride, followed by a 3-mile run. And it was really tiring. But I had two goals in mind. I wanted to finish it, and I didn't want to finish last. And I did both of those things. I certainly, was very close to the bottom of the pack. But, I wasn't in it to win or even, get in any form of the lead. And to get ready for it, I really did a lot of training and figuring out, for example, if I was swimming, how could I bring my Dexcom with me? Because the Dexcom isn't waterproof. And the receiver itself, here, I have one of these things receiver. This receiver isn't waterproof. There's like an open slot here, for example. And so you bring it in the ocean or drop it in a puddle, it's dead. And so I figured, I found a waterproof pouch that I could wear around my neck while swimming. So every time I went for a training swim, I would put this around my neck. And if it buzzed, I could hear it in the water. And then I would have like glucose tabs in my little swim cap. And I could take them without having to figure a way of getting out of the water. And over time I figured out where my blood sugar needed to be when I started. And what I should do, should I wear my pump while I'm swimming or should I take it off? And in the end, I typically took my pump off when swimming and had my blood sugar at a level like 220 or something.
That's what was my next question. How did you maintain your numbers while doing the triathlon? And that's a good info. So now coming to this diabetes, since you're again a technical guy very involved into this diabetes technology and all this stuff, gadgets and all this stuff. You're also involved, I think, in the Diabetes Mind Design Challenge few months back.
Yeah.
So what kind of design challenges is the industry and also other people facing with the diabetes, instruments or with diabetes technologies out there? And what do you think is going to change in the next decade and to make the life better for a diabetic?
Well, it's very interesting. Amy Tendrick of Diabetes Mind started the design challenge 3 years ago. So this was the third year it was on, and she asked me earlier in the year if I would be one of the judges on it. And the idea was that she opens the competition up. There are a number of, it's sponsored by an organization, a healthcare foundation in California. There's a prize of, I don't remember, like $4,000 for the winner in 2 categories. And I was really interested to see the ideas that people come up with, because I'm probably like a lot of people. I'm sick of things that are blue or black or silver. I'm sick of things like, I love my Dexcom, but it's almost as big as a mobile phone. And I like things that are smaller to carry but easier to use. Yes. I'd like for things to be connected. Mm-hmm. So one of the problems we have is I have an insulin pump, 3 blood glucose meters, and a continuous glucose monitor. And I can't take the data from those 5 devices and combine it and look at it in one piece of software. Mm-hmm. So those were the kind of things I brought to the table. And what we ended up doing was looking at the top 10 entries. I think there was some community voting first. And we spent several hours on a telephone call trying to decide which of those in each of the categories made sense. And there were some really interesting things. If you have time to look at any of them, I would look at Pancreum, PANCREUM.com. Mm-hmm. That's a prototype device that's one of the best looking possible artificial pancreases I've ever seen. And I met the guy who's leading the company that's done it, and he really knows what he's doing. So if he should happen to be able to produce that, I've seen the prototypes, early prototypes. Mm-hmm. I think anyone would want to wear it. It just looks really cool.
Yeah, I did read about that blog, and I think he stood first in the competition and few months back, and I did read that about that.
Yeah, so. And then the only other thing was that she had a number of people, about 50 or 60 people, go to an innovation summit in California where we listened to several presentations from various people about what it takes to create devices and the design process, and then the challenges of various things. And we also went through some ideas about generating ideas. And there were some interesting ideas that came up in that one day in a room together. It was good stuff.
So since we have only 1 or 1.5 minutes, I'm going to wrap up with the last question.
Sure.
So you have been diabetic for 40 years, and you still don't know if the cure is going to come or not in the next decade or 2. So what's your hope? Hope is always good, but what's your hope? Are you going to see any cure in your tenure, in your life tenure?
I think we might see a cure in my lifetime. I'd be surprised if it will be in 10 years' time, and part of the reason being that it's very challenging. A cure means different things for different people, and the diabetes is not an easy disease. But I think within the next 10 years, we'll see very new developments in treatment. I think the artificial pancreas is one of the most exciting things I've seen. I mean, bear in mind, in '72, I didn't have an insulin pump. I didn't have a blood glucose meter. Now I have a pump and a continuous glucose monitor. And those things help me stay healthier. Now, if an artificial pancreas arrives in 5 years, that will help me stay healthier and live longer. And that means that people who are being diagnosed today will stay alive long enough to probably see the benefits of a cure and live life more easily.
Thank you, Bernard, for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts and your experiences for this 4 decades. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Good talking.